Do you ever wonder how some people command a room without uttering a single word? They don't beg or demand, they simply withdraw. And just like that, the entire energy shifts. People start to question, to chase, to feel. Now, imagine if you could do the same. What if you stopped reacting to every little thing? What if you chose silence instead of an automatic response, retreat instead of an explosion? What do you think would happen? The irresistible pull of scarcity. The truth is, when you stop being constantly available, emotionally, physically, psychologically, the world around you enters a quiet crisis. People are used to controlling you through your reactions, your impulses, your predictability. But the moment you choose to withdraw, the entire dynamic flips. Those who thought they knew you realize they knew absolutely nothing at all. Carl Jung famously said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves." So, consider this. When you become inaccessible, who truly gets desperate? Who gets irritated? Who tries to provoke you just to elicit some emotion? The answers reveal more about them than about you, and, more importantly, they expose how much you might still be manipulated without even realizing it. You continuously give yourself away to please, to maintain peace, to avoid losing people who, deep down, were never truly with you. With every forced yes, every immediate response, every emotional reaction, you surrender a piece of your precious energy. At the end of the day, what's left? Exhaustion. Frustration. An unexplainable emptiness. And I'll tell you why. You are too available for those who don't deserve even a minute of your silence. Embracing conscious withdrawal. This isn't about turning your back on the world. It's about consciously choosing yourself. It's about embracing what Jung called individuation, the profound process of becoming whole, authentic, and complete. This journey begins when you understand that silence can be more potent than 1,000 arguments. Withdrawal, when born from awareness and not escape, is a formidable act of power. So, I ask you directly, how long will you allow yourself to be controlled by the emotions of others? How long will you react like a puppet every time someone pokes at your wounds? Perhaps it's time to cut those strings. To withdraw. To become an enigma. Because when you stop being constantly available, everything changes. The illusion of constant availability. You've been conditioned to always be present, to respond quickly, to please, to say yes even when your heart screams no. Since childhood, you've been taught that your worth is tied to how available you are to others. But here's a truth that few will tell you with such clarity: this excessive availability isn't a virtue, it's a prison. As long as you believe you need to be accessible all the time, emotionally or otherwise, you will be manipulated, drained, and forgotten as soon as you're no longer useful. Why? Because constant availability makes you predictable. And anything predictable can be used as a tool. People start treating you like an emotional emergency button. They press it when they crave attention, relief, or validation, then put you back on the shelf. You don't realize this because you're caught in an illusion, the belief that being present for everyone will make someone present for you. It simply doesn't work that way. The mask and the drain. Carl Jung spoke of the persona, the mask we wear to gain acceptance, love, and recognition. This very mask is what keeps you overly available. You say, "It's okay," when you're suffocating. You reply to messages instantly, even when you're utterly exhausted. You explain, justify, and defend yourself as if you owe the world an apology for existing. But here's the stark truth: the more you place yourself at the center of others' stages, the more you vanish from your own being. Constant availability is a subtle form of self-abandonment, a disguised way of seeking approval, avoiding rejection, and trying to control the image others have of you. This control comes at a steep price: your peace. Your vital energy is distributed as if it were infinite, when in reality, it's incredibly limited. People who demand your constant availability don't actually want you. They want what you provide: validation, company, distraction, emotional comfort. But when you change, when you set a boundary, when you refuse to react, those same people become irritated. They accuse you. They say you're weird. It's not because you changed, it's because you stopped being functional for them. And here's the cruelest part, the more available you are, the less value others assign to you. What's too abundant becomes emotionally worthless. No one respects what they don't have to earn. No one truly values what is always effortlessly there. So, pause and reflect, who truly deserves your time? Who merits your attention, your presence, your listening? Or, perhaps more powerfully, who deserves your absence? Guarding your psychic energy. Before you answer that, let's understand why we react so much, why we give in so easily. What drives this almost automatic urge to respond, justify, and please? The answer lies in what Carl Jung called psychic energy. Every thought, emotion, and action consumes a part of this internal resource. The critical question is, are you actively choosing where your energy goes, or are you letting the world make that decision for you? Every impulsive reaction is a waste of psychic energy. When you defend yourself against trivial criticism, respond to a provocation just to prove a point, engage in pointless debates, or try to please those who don't value you, you're squandering your inner strength on things that don't nourish you. Jung was clear, that which you resist, persists. The more you react, the more entangled you become. Emotionally drained people aren't weak, they're simply misdirected. And what happens to someone who lives exhausted? They become vulnerable. When you're vulnerable, you're easy prey. Manipulative, opportunistic, and emotionally needy people sense this. They see that you don't know how to guard your energy, that you react to everything, that you're constantly trying to fix the world. And they take advantage. Jung believed a healthy psyche knows how to keep energy within its system. This means knowing how to say no without guilt. Knowing how to remain silent without feeling cowardly. Knowing how to observe before acting. True power isn't in reacting, it's in choosing when and how to act. This is only possible when you know yourself well enough to recognize your own impulses. How many nights have you lost sleep over an unresolved conversation? How many hours have you spent ruminating on what you should have said, or trying to understand why someone treated you poorly? This is energy draining away with no return. You're keeping alive ghosts that should have died long ago and feeding dynamics that only exist because you insist on responding. Psychic energy is like a force field. When well guarded, it creates presence. You enter a room and command respect without uttering a word. But when poorly managed, you become invisible, reactive, fragile. And the world shows little mercy for those who give in easily. Therefore, start observing your own triggers. What makes you react automatically? What causes you to lose your center? These are the exact points where your energy escapes, and that's precisely where you need to focus your work. This isn't about becoming cold or indifferent, it's about becoming selective. It's about being sovereign over yourself. Unveiling silent manipulation. One of Jung's greatest insights is this. When you conserve your energy, you disrupt the projections others place upon you. And that, believe me, bothers people a lot. Now, we're stepping into a darker territory, silent manipulation. Opportunistic people don't need to yell, threaten, or force situations. They simply trigger the buttons you've left exposed, and you react. Always. Carl Jung called this projection, the psychological mechanism through which people project onto others what they cannot see in themselves. But there's another side to this phenomenon that few notice. While others project onto you, you also become the receptacle for these images. The more emotionally available you are, the more you become a blank canvas for these projections. You know that friend who only calls when they're in crisis? That partner who always needs you to save the day? That person who praises you, but only as long as you're useful to them? None of this is accidental. They aren't relating to you. They're relating to the idea of you, to the role you've agreed to play. And why do you agree? Because you're afraid of disappointing. Afraid of not being loved. Afraid of being abandoned. The most effective manipulation doesn't happen with shouting. It happens in the quiet of guilt. When you feel you owe something to others. When you believe you need to be available, need to help, need to understand, even when it destroys you inside. Here's the crucial point: the manipulator doesn't need to control you. They just need you to keep reacting the same way. But when you stop reacting, the game breaks. When you start saying no, responding with silence, withdrawing instead of explaining yourself, the projections begin to crumble. The mask they put on you falls. And this leaves people profoundly unsettled. Because they no longer know who you are. Worse still, now they are forced to look at themselves. And not everyone is prepared for that. Your unavailability is a threat, because it forces others to confront their own emptiness. The silence you offer reveals the internal noise they desperately don't want to hear. And then comes the attack. The criticism. The emotional drama. Not because you are wrong, but because you stopped serving as a convenient mirror. Jung said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." When you withdraw, when you stop feeding the cycle, the other's shadow begins to emerge. And this is unbearable for those who have always used you as an escape. But what about you? Are you ready to deal with the discomfort of being misunderstood, rejected, or even attacked for protecting yourself? Are you ready to endure the silence that follows the rupture? Because it is precisely in that silence that a new kind of power is born. The uncomfortable power of silence. The modern world is deafening. Everyone wants to be heard, to respond instantly, to win pointless debates and prove their point, even if it costs them their own peace. But there is a power few know, and even fewer master, the power of silence. Not the silence of passivity or cowardice, but conscious, strategic, brutally lucid silence. The kind of silence that isn't absence, but amplified presence. Jung viewed silence not as a void, but as fertile ground for inner transformation. When you stop reacting, you begin to observe. And by observing, you discern patterns that previously went unnoticed, emotional repetitions, manipulation games, cycles of self-sabotage. Silence allows for lucidity, and lucidity is dangerous for those who live to control you. Have you noticed how some people panic when you don't respond? When you don't explain yourself? When you simply disappear? It's not because they miss you, it's because your silence strips away their narrative control. While you speak, you're still in their game. But when you're silent, you change the rules. And that destabilizes anyone who thrives on your reactions. True silence isn't the absence of voice. It is mastery over one's own energy. It's the refusal to be dragged down by someone else's emotions. It is the conscious choice not to engage in battles that aren't worth your weariness. Jung stated that individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, requires this distancing. Only in silence can you truly listen to yourself without the world's interference. But don't be fooled, silence has a price. It will distance you from people who only valued you for the role you played. It will make you incomprehensible to those who only saw you through their own projections. It will make you seem cold, distant, even arrogant. But all of this is a reaction from those who never wanted to deal with your depth, only with your utility. And here's the hard truth: the more you mature, the more selective you become with your words. Because you understand that each sentence is an energetic investment, and not everyone deserves access to your truth. Sometimes, silence isn't retreat. It is sovereignty. It is the language of those who no longer need to prove anything to anyone. Silence is uncomfortable because it forces others to deal with their own thoughts, with their own internal noise. And this discomfort reveals more about them than any argument of yours ever could. You don't need to explain your absence. It explains itself. And those who feel threatened by it reveal how much they depended on your imbalance to maintain their own control. But the most powerful silence isn't the one that disturbs others. It is the silence that reconstructs you from within. The silence that connects you to something beyond external approval. It is in this internal space, free from others' demands, that you begin to recover your vital energy, to reconnect with your essence. The art of being selective with your soul. It's pointless to understand all of this intellectually if, in practice, you continue saying yes when you mean no. Responding to messages that bother you. Participating in empty conversations. Maintaining relationships that only exist out of inertia. Awareness without action is just another form of self-deception. True transformation begins when you firmly decide to become selective. And this demands emotional discipline. Conscious unavailability isn't about being cold, arrogant, or indifferent. It's about no longer being accessible to anyone at any time for any reason. It's about seizing control of your own energy, your own time, your own peace. And this starts with small, deliberate actions. Not responding immediately. Pausing to breathe before reacting. Exiting a discussion before being dragged into chaos. Turning off your phone without guilt. Saying, "Not today." Saying, "I'm not interested." Saying, "I won't get involved." But here's the most crucial part, you don't need to justify your absence. You don't need to explain your silence. You owe nothing to anyone, but yourself. And this, for many people, is unforgivable. Because when you refuse to explain yourself, you strip away their power to keep you within an emotional narrative where you are always the helpful, understanding, accessible one. Carl Jung understood that every process of individuation involves a period of isolation, not a depressive isolation, but a sacred isolation. A time of inner retreat where you relearn to listen to your own voice without the world's interference. Where you rebuild your identity not based on the gaze of others, but from your own center. Want a good measure of your evolution? Observe who starts to distance themselves from you when you become more reserved. Notice who tries to provoke you when you stop reacting. See who accuses you of having changed when you finally start to protect yourself. These aren't signs that you are wrong, they are proof that you have begun to free yourself. Being unavailable is uncomfortable at first. You will feel guilty. You will think you are being selfish. You will hear that you are being too harsh. But this is part of the deconstruction process. You've spent your life being conditioned to put yourself second. It's natural that change causes discomfort, not only in you but in everyone who benefited from your old version. Conscious unavailability is the foundation of self-determination. When you say no to the world, you are saying yes to yourself. When you withdraw from a toxic environment, you are reaffirming that your peace is worth more than any false connection. And when you stop explaining yourself, you begin to be respected, even if it's by few. But not everyone is ready for this type of presence. Because your emotional absence will expose wounds they do not want to face. It will reveal how much they depended on your emotional chaos to feel in control. And it is at this moment that the rupture comes. And with the rupture comes the pain, the loneliness, the estrangement, the feeling that you are losing something, when in fact, you are simply freeing yourself. The rebirth of the sovereign self. When you stop being available to everyone, something profound begins to happen. First comes the silence, an uncomfortable silence that seems to scream inside you. You'll wonder if you did the right thing. If you're being too harsh. If you're losing people who liked you. But gradually, this silence transforms. It begins to cleanse. To calm. To heal. And then comes solitude, but not the solitude of absence. It is the solitude of total presence, your own. The solitude of the strong. The solitude of one who no longer betrays themselves to keep others close. And in that space, where there was once confusion, clarity enters. Where there was once anxiety, peace enters. Where there was once neediness, a new kind of strength enters. The strength of being whole within yourself. Carl Jung emphasized that the process of individuation, becoming who you truly are, requires you to distance yourself from the collective. To disidentify from the mask. To walk alone for a while. And that is exactly what you are doing when you decide to become unavailable. You are not fleeing the world. You are returning to yourself. It is at this point that you stop being a reactor, and become a creator. You cease to be shaped by circumstances, and begin to shape your reality from within. The people who feel uncomfortable with your absence, they reveal that they never wanted you, they wanted the role you played. And now that you no longer fit, they don't know what to do with you. And that is liberating. You will lose people, but you will find yourself. You will distance yourself from places, but you will reconnect with your essence. You will become misunderstood, but finally, you will begin to be respected. Because when you are no longer available for anything, you become valuable, rare, unforgettable. And make no mistake, this is a rebirth. A new beginning. The start of a life where you are no longer available for emotional crumbs, for mind games, for voids disguised as affection. Now, you only accept what resonates with your peace, with your truth, with your wholeness. If this message resonated with you, it's because a part of you is already ready for this new path. A part of you has already understood that being loved means nothing if for that you have to abandon yourself. And that true self-love begins when you choose yourself, even if it costs you to be alone for a while. Now, tell me in the comments, are you ready to be misunderstood, rejected, or even hated in the name of your inner freedom? Are you willing to pay the price of being you? If this message truly touched you, write in the comments, I choose my peace. Let's see how many of you are ready for this profound transition.